Okay, so Elon Musk, right? Tech genius, space explorer, loves a good meme. But is he also maybe a national security risk?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, isn't it?
It is. And this Wired article we're diving into today really goes there. It's titled, Elon Musk is a national security risk. No mincing words.
Yeah, they really don't. And it all stems from this tweet Musk put out and
Mhm.
deleted, the kind. Makes you wonder what he's thinking, even for him.
Oh, absolutely. So for those who missed it, this tweet, well, it seemed to joke about the lack of assassination attempts on Biden and Harris.
Right, and you could almost see someone trying to brush it off. Oh, it's just Musk being Musk, stirring the pot. But this article argues that's a dangerous simplification, even if you meant it as dark humor.
And that's where things get really interesting for me, because we all know Musk loves pushing boundaries online. But this one, the article argues it goes way beyond a harmless joke, especially with how many people hang on his every word.
Absolutely. And it gets into the weeds legally, too. There's this thing called the true threat test. Basically, it boils down to whether something is a genuine, believable threat of violence.
Okay, so like saying, I'm so mad I could scream isn't the same as saying, I'm going to find you and hurt you. One's just venting, the other's a direct threat. Got it.
Exactly. So applying that to Musk's tweet, does it cross that line? It's murky.
So legally speaking, is it a true threat or no?
Legally? Debatable. Someone could argue it was rhetorical, or even a really clumsy attempt at social commentary. But, and this is key, even if it doesn't technically break the law, it still has the power to potentially incite violence, especially for people already drawn to extremist views.
Like, it might not be the intent to start a fire, but if you toss a match on kindling.
You're playing with fire, exactly. And that's where Musk's position as this billionaire CEO with a huge
Right.
platform, it makes it even riskier. He's
Yeah.
got a level of influence that most people can't imagine, so his words have weight even when he's trying to be funny. This article argues that kind of rhetoric, even unintended, it normalizes violence, makes it seem acceptable, and that can have real-world consequences.
Right, so dangerous game he's playing. But here's the thing. It gets even more complicated. When you remember, Musk isn't just some random CEO with a Twitter account. This is the guy who runs SpaceX. And as the article points out, they've got massive contracts with the US government. We're talking billions of dollars, access to incredibly sensitive information, space exploration, defense, the whole nine
And
yards.
that's where this tweet, seemingly isolated, suddenly becomes a national security concern. Because think about it, to work on projects like that, you need security clearance. It's basically an intense background check, making sure you're not a risk. The government weighs up the risk versus the reward of having you involved.
So on one hand, you've got Musk, brilliant innovator. His companies are vital to some of the US government's biggest goals. But on the other hand, well, you've got this pattern of behavior, an online persona that's, let's just say, unpredictable and often inflammatory.
Yeah, putting it mildly. And that puts the government in a tough spot. Revoking security clearance from someone like Musk, especially with his company so deep in these sensitive areas,
Hmm.
that would have huge ripple effects. But ignoring this behavior, especially as it seems to be escalating, also risky.
Yeah, talk about a rock and a hard place, right? I mean, how do you even start weighing the risks and rewards with someone like Elon Musk?
$1 million question. And this Wired piece does a great job laying it all out. Like, here are the things about Musk's past that have national security folks seriously worried.
Because it's not just this one tweet, right? The article's saying it's part of a bigger pattern.
Right, exactly. They bring up that whole Starlink situation in Ukraine.
Oh, right, right. Refresher for folks who don't recall, that's Musk's satellite internet company. And when the war first broke out, he gave Ukraine access, which was huge GE for them for communication, resisting the invasion.
Huge. Yeah, but then when Ukraine wanted to use Starlink for an offensive to try and take back Crimea, Musk shut it down.
And his reasoning was what? Because of US sanctions against Russia?
That was his stated reason, yeah. And look, regardless of how you feel about the geopolitics of it all, that situation was a big flashing warning sign, showed that Musk's personal beliefs, his own allegiances, could directly affect what his companies do, even when national security is on the line.
Yeah, not a great look. And then the article brings up his China connections too, which is another worry, right?
Right, so Musk's companies, Tesla especially, do a ton of business in China. And to be clear, that in itself isn't some automatic security threat. Plenty of companies operate in China.
Huh?
But the level of dependence there and the fact that those business interests could be used as leverage by the Chinese government,
Mm-hmm.
that's a factor you can't just ignore.
So less about having ties to China, more about what those ties could mean, how they could create a conflict of interest, especially when you're also dealing with top secret government stuff.
Nailed it. And the article says this, on top of everything else Musk does, paints a worrying picture.
Like what else? Give me some examples.
Well, they talk about that whole thing with him supposedly communicating directly with Putin, true or not. It just makes things murkier, you know. Then there's how he's used Twitter to amplify certain right-wing talking points. Again, not illegal, but it adds another layer to this idea of potential foreign influence.
So it's like each thing on its own, maybe not the biggest deal, but put it all together, suddenly it's way more volatile, way less predictable.
Exactly. And that's what the article does so well. It connects those dots. It's not saying just one tweet or one business deal is the problem. It's saying this is a pattern that suggests Musk is willing to play by his own rules, and those rules might not line up with national security, whether he means for them to or not.
So are they saying Elon Musk is intentionally trying to undermine the U.S. government? Not necessarily, and that's what makes this so interesting. The article isn't saying Musk is some evil mastermind trying to take down America. It acknowledges his brilliance, says his companies are valuable.
Okay, so what's the takeaway then? What's the big picture we should be thinking about here?
The article's point is that you've got this perfect storm brewing Musk's unpredictable behavior, the power and influence he has, plus his companies being so deeply involved with the U.S. government. It's not about him being malicious. It's about the potential here, the fact that things could go very wrong very fast.
Makes you think, right? Like, how much of this is just Elon being Elon, this whole clash between his personality, his power, and national security? Or is this something bigger, something we need to worry about as tech keeps advancing and the lines between private companies and the government get blurrier? That is the question, isn't it? And even though the Wired article is about Musk specifically, it brings up some broader points that are worth considering.
Like what? What kind of points?
Well, one thing it really highlights is how much national security threats have changed, in the 21st century. It's not just about spies and armies anymore. We're talking cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, the power that individuals or companies have now to influence things. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, the old playbook doesn't really apply anymore, does it?
Right. And that's where it gets tricky, because on the one hand, you want to encourage innovation. You need people like Elon Musk pushing the limits, whether it's space exploration or technology in general. But at the same time, we need some kind of guardrails to make sure that progress doesn't come at the expense of national security.
Trying to find that sweet spot, right, between letting innovation flourish, but also protecting ourselves.
Exactly. And this whole situation with Musk, it really exposes that tension, because it makes us ask some hard questions, like, how do you measure risk when it comes to someone so powerful, so influential, especially when their actions don't fit neatly into our existing ideas of what a threat looks like?
It's a tough one, for sure.
It is. And how do you balance transparency, holding people accountable, with the need to keep certain information secret for national security? These are things we as a society need to figure out, because tech isn't slowing down anytime soon.
So it's not just about Musk, then. It's about a much bigger conversation we need to have. Power, responsibility, and what national security even means in a world that's constantly changing.
100%. And the Wired article is a good wake-up call, I think. It reminds us how high the stakes are and that we need to be having this conversation now.
Absolutely. So, listeners, as you go about your day, next time you see Elon Musk tweeting up a storm, think about everything we've talked about, the power dynamics, his personality, the national security angle. It's complicated, it's messy, but it's a conversation worth having. And that's a wrap on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.